So let's get into the debate. How it's going to work is we're going to have two forum discussion points. I'm going to address the panelists to give their view on the discussion points, and we'll also open it up to the audience for comments, not questions per se. After the two discussion points, there will be an opportunity for the audience to quiz the panelist members. So the first discussion point is, in what ways can the diaspora youth be involved in the development of Ghana? Now, obviously, one way that springs to mind is through volunteering, with various organizations. Now, Carl, you mentioned earlier that you had volunteered with the WAMP campaign. How did you find the experience, and would you say that, the opportunity was accessible option?
Yeah, just to point out in the beginning, I think that point in general, the first thing that needs to be highlighted is that there needs to be a want by the individual to obviously go out and explore those opportunities. I was lucky enough to have it obviously by my next door, and be in contact with Arnold. But I think for young diaspora, if we really do want to get involved, it's just a case of being proactive and going out and finding out about opportunities that are available now and out there. But in regards to that question, I think with the WAM campaign, one of the things that is that makes it different to a lot of some of the other opportunities out there is that it's quite innovative. They're very active within social media, and obviously us being young people, social media is one of our main tools, so it makes it easy and it makes it quite accessible. Another thing I'd say that makes it very different to a lot of the opportunities out there for volunteering is that once you do go to Ghana and you do volunteer with the WAM campaign, it's not a case of having a set agenda and a set schedule and you have to stick to strict activities. They kind of give you the freedom to go out there and actually explore and really get something out of it, because a lot of volunteering opportunities make everything very straightforward, and there's not really the opportunity to get something that you can take home with you. Whereas with the WAM campaign, because there's opportunity to be a lead volunteer and to set up some of the programs yourself, you really do feel like fulfilled once you've taken that opportunity. So I think working with some of the smaller charities out there, like the WAM campaign and like Mifri Ghana, make the opportunity more fulfilling and make it so that you get a lot more out of the experience. And off the back of that, like myself, you maybe probably be a bit more inspired to go out and do more in your community, having seen the effect that you can have in someone else's community.
Thank you, Carl. I'll turn to Francesca now. Would you say that there's any barriers that surround youth engagement in the diaspora?
Yeah, there are loads of barriers that I think surround youth engagement in diaspora. I think one of the biggest ones that I find, and I actually saw something online today, is there needs to be a clear distinction between voluntourism and volunteerism, in the sense of when you see different opportunities that are promoted and you have to pay like £2,000 to volunteer for 7 days, and you ask how meaningful is the volunteering, or how meaningful is the change that I'm being engaged in. And I don't think sometimes enough is done, or there are enough opportunities for diaspora to meaningfully engage. And what I mean by that is sometimes you have to understand the context of the situation that you're going to volunteer in before you say, I'm interested in education, so I'm going to help to build a school, because sometimes that isn't sustainable. And I think when diaspora begin to ask questions about how meaningful is it, what is the sustainable change, and what are really the developmental issues in the place that I'm going to, once that barrier is overcome, I think that the volunteering will become meaningful. Another barrier that I highlighted earlier in my response is the cost. Sometimes it's expensive. Like, we come from expensive parts of the world, and it's not easy to just say, I'm going because I don't have a quick £1,000 to pay for something, and sometimes the resources don't exist. So a lot of people say, yes, diaspora engagement is important, but sometimes that funding isn't available. And the last barrier that I'll mention, I was having a conversation with one of my friends that I think is important, and I think it's sometimes the diaspora's own mindset is a barrier. Because we can go in as in saying, I'm going to offer something, but you don't really understand the context. What we see of our countries, my family come from Nigeria, and what you see is the latest WizKid video, you see people and girls, you see things on Bella Niger, and to us, that's the countries we come from. But we don't have a true understanding of some of the issues that are there. And it's going in with a mindset that I'm going to learn to see what is there before I can offer my skills meaningfully to actually make a difference. And I think when those things are addressed, then we can be able to see real change in the things that we're interested in.
Stella, can I ask you just to elaborate on that, on the accessibility from your opinion? Would you say that volunteering is accessible to the regular person in the diaspora? And do you think they know how to go about, engaging with these organizations?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll actually answer that with a personal experience. A few years ago, when I was still on the cusp of being a young diaspora, I was looking for opportunities to go somewhere in Africa to work and volunteer. It probably took me about a year to be able to find something that I thought fitted what I was looking for, because initially everything that I came across, as Francesca was saying, was around 2,000 for a couple of weeks, and I was probably just going to be playing with children, and that's not what I was looking for. I was looking for something where I would feel that I was improving on my skills, that I was making some sort of impact, etc. So it was quite challenging, and eventually I found something and adapted it to what I was looking for, and it was more of a bit like a match, if you like. I don't think it is accessible. I mean, as I said, we've just launched a research report, and some of the issues that came out of it was the accessibility and the fact that people are very keen to engage and be involved, but don't have any ideas where to go to and who to speak to. But I think that they are, so in a sense, with some of the recommendations that have come out of that, it's around how we develop structures and how we improve on communication so that people like yourselves are able to go to one place and you can find some information of where to go to and what to do. In the specific context, if you like, of Ghana, we're lucky to have someone from the High Commission here. And I think that's just information around, in terms of communication flow. So you have an organization like WAM Campaign that has access to a number of young people in the diaspora, and it's about trying to see how the government can utilize organizations like that and provide information that is available and sent out perhaps on a regular sort of basis. And then obviously there are organizations like ourselves as well, Afford, etc.
Okay, thank you for that, Stella. Lastly, Mr. Addo, I'm coming to you. Your thoughts on the barriers that surround diaspora youth engagement and how we can possibly overcome these?
One thing that I would like to touch on from the beginning is the attitude. You see, we are living in a place that, let me put it bluntly, the system seems to be working efficiently. In our part of the world, we are still a developing country. And that type of attitude, that everything must work as I see it in UK or in Germany or this, it won't. So you must be able to adapt. You see, you have to understand how the system works. You adapt, but you try to also better the system. Yeah. So that is what the one major challenge that I see most of us are confronted with. There's nothing strange. And challenges are there for you to confront and then to break through. So that you'll be able to tell others, I've been able to make it, and you can also make it. So the first thing is that please, just disabuse yourself that, oh, it is too hard. It's too. The same people who are telling you it's too hard, they are making it. They are making it and making it well. I was talking to one Lebanese in Ghana. He said, Kofi, in Ghana, I see monies flowing in the gutters. I said, what are you telling me? I said, I see money flowing in the gutters. But it takes an entrepreneur spirit to see the monies flowing. People are coming. You just, sometimes just take your time. When you are flying to Ghana, see the number of whites, Chinese, and other people in the flight going to Ghana. And when you are coming to London or other places, see the number of people who are coming, the blacks. Everybody wants to get away, and the people are coming back. So the first question you should ask yourself, if there's nothing good in Ghana, how come these people are coming? So there are a lot of opportunities. The challenges are there. I have to be frank with you. The challenges are there. I'm not running away from it. If I don't tell you the truth, I'm a liar. The challenges are there. But the challenges are also opportunities. Yeah. That's how I see it. Everywhere I go, I tell people, look, when we were in Germany and the time came for us to go back, I went to see some friends. I said, Kofi, are you going back to Ghana? I said, yes. So you are joking. After 1 year experience, you can speak the German language. You can easily get employed. I said, no, I'm not coming here to do any work. I'm going back and then to better the lot of other Ghanaians. So the whole thing is that you must have that good attitude. Second one, you must be motivated for a purpose or something in life. If you are not motivated to do anything, you are just going. You reach anywhere, people have arrived, you too have arrived. No, you must be focused in whatever you are doing. One of our panelists said something. He said, the system sometimes frustrates you, but if you are motivated about what you are doing, when the system is trying to frustrate you, you don't care because you know what you are going to achieve at the end. And the other thing is that there are some results. Maybe during your lifetime, I'm going back. As a future leader, you might not see it. But the seed has already been sown. And the next generation are going to reap from what you have sown. So let us be channel of change. And this is the good news I'm bringing to you. Thank you very much.
Wise words, Mr. Addo. I just want to throw this open to any one of our panelists. Mr. Addo touched on, the many opportunities that are there, and obviously this is evident with, the wide-scale migration of other people from other countries coming to Ghana to obviously tap into it. But do we think these opportunities are marketed in the correct way? And if they're not, whose responsibility is it to seek out these opportunities? Is it Ghana as a government, or is it us as in the diaspora to be proactive and actually looking, to engage in these opportunities? Yeah, go ahead and answer.
Yeah, that is one major activity of the High Commission. We are here to support you with all information that you need to make an informed decision. You see, you are so much privileged and positioned in this country to get access to so many people and other things. Have the linkages, the right linkages. Once you have seen the opportunities, begin, I call it economic espionage. Do you know why? Tete Kwashi, you all know Tete Kwashi. At so many years ago, he went to Fernando Po, and what did he do? He saw the cocoa seedling, and said, this seedling can make a change, and he brought it to Ghana. Today, because of what one man did, it has become a mainstay of Ghana's economy. How many Tete Kwashis are sitting here? But you see things and you just allow them to pass. So build the right linkages. And when you come to the High Commission, if there is anything that we can do to support you, we will do it. Before I left Ghana, we have seen that most of the youth are trying to go into business. But the major thing that we are all aware of is the cost of capital, the seed money to start business. So we have one financial thing that we used to call Export Development and Investment Fund. We changed to Export Development and Agriculture Fund. We are also going to change it to support those who are going to startups. And this is where we want you to come out with bankable projects. One of the best, and let me tell you, lucrative things that is going on in Ghana. You can own land. You can own land in Ghana. Because if you are not careful, very soon, let me just tell you, my colleagues is a Nigerian, the way the Nigerians are buying our lands. So that's what we are also looking for. If you come out with a bankable project, something that can turn the economy of Ghana around, something that you will not be employed, but you would rather be employing people, we are there to welcome you. Thank you very much.
Francesca, do you want to add to that?
I want to add to it, but in a completely different way. Whenever I hear about, a lot of the things I hear about diaspora engagement is usually about enterprise and trade and investment. But I think some of the opportunities that aren't always highlighted are the different thematic areas that are in development. Development is about the economy, but it's also about education. It's also about gender equality. It's about youth development. It's about everything to build an infrastructure in the country, and sometimes those opportunities aren't obvious. Those opportunities aren't there. And I think more needs to be done to engage diaspora. So if there are young people in the UK who are advocates for women's rights, in the sense that young girls don't always have access to education, or they're not safe in the environment they're in, how do you engage in those opportunities? How do you bring your experience of engaging with different countries and different development organizations to say, I want to address a particular issue, because you could have a stable economy and your education system is rubbish. What happens to the next generation after that? And I think it's creating those opportunities as well, and they're not always there, or they're not always obvious.
No, I think Francesca makes a really good point, and also Kofi as well. And I just wanted to touch on, it's almost a little bit similar to what Francesca was saying, but just in regards to what Kofi highlighted about linkages and building a network for yourself. A lot of people, when we're thinking about what we can do at home, we think on an individual basis, and we need to take a mindset of integrated partnerships. A lot of us are coming from different sectors, so some of us might be from the private sector, public sector, we might be from anywhere, we might be from sports, gender empowerment. It doesn't really matter. It's just a case of we all know what the end goal is, and we can use our partnerships that we build, whether we're networking at a forum like this, or whether we meet a friend, or whether we use a cousin. Our networks are what's going to help us go over there and actually make things happen. And also, I just wanted to touch on another point into whatever development is going to take place in Ghana, it needs to correlate with the issues that young people are facing over there. So we need to have that access to them. And now, because of globalization, there's no barrier to anybody you can speak to anywhere in the world. We've all got a cousin, an auntie, a brother or sister that lives in Ghana. Interaction can take place virtually as well as over the phone. So it's a case of maybe creating online forums. And these are the kind of ideas that we can bring to the table at places like this, and use things like Mifri Ghana and the WAM campaign as a platform to take this stuff forward and create exchange between us and people in Ghana, and ultimately work towards the development.
I just wanted to pick up on the point that Mr. Ado made about the attitude, basically, and I think that is really a key factor. And we find in the work that we've done at Afford that you tend to have a number of people who decide at some point to return, and then within a year or 2 years they come back, or 3 years they come back, and they feel really, really frustrated. And part of that is not preparing themselves for the challenges and thinking that everything should run in a certain way. And so that's quite key, and it's important to utilize your networks, see if you can contact other people who've already done this before, so that they can give you the information, or they can kind of do a prep, if you like. But also, and again, I think that whole point as well about wherever there's a problem, there's an opportunity, something that we say a lot at Afford as well. And I think for those who are entrepreneurial, they can probably see through that. But it's good to think about it that way, because that's in a sense what it is. And in terms of how we support ourselves, it's really about how we view going back to Ghana or going back somewhere else, and how we view that kind of whatever the problem is, and trying to turn that on its head. Around the investment point as well, from the research that we carried out, it was targeted at people between 18 to 35. Altogether, I think we had about 173 respondents. About 20 of those were over 35, but out of the 151, about 27% of them had invested in land. Another 20%, I think, had also invested in other types of businesses as well. So there are people there who are already doing these things, young people there who are already engaging in this way. And I guess it's about, again, just utilizing the networks as well.
Enterprise and investment is important, but until every single person has access to education, and in rural parts people have access to running water, and there's infrastructure that allows people to live a basic standard of life, I'm not sure why you would celebrate the fact that you are able to say a government is stable. Because until a government is properly structured to deal with the issues affecting the people in the country, I'm not really sure what you're celebrating. And I say that, and like I said I agree in part with what you have said, but that's a very, in my opinion, narrow perspective of what development is. Development is not just about what I can gain. Development is about bringing something to a place where you're able to stand on your own. And until the little girl in the most remote village in Ghana is able to go to school and become the next Mr. Kofi Addo, I'm not really sure why we would celebrate that kind of development. That's just my opinion.
I think the issue that we're highlighting here is the relationship between top-down and bottom-up development. Because the approach when developing countries, when they want to look at a lot of the Western world and they want to develop, they take the top-down approach. You know, big investment, creating massive shopping malls and that stuff. And again, you do find that gap between the rich and the poor. And it's up for us, if we can identify that, along with a lot of the people in Ghana, to take that bottom-up approach and that integrated partnership approach and actually address some of the issues that Francesca highlighted earlier on. Because you won't get that from some of these organizations that are specifically dedicated to increasing their funds and maximizing their profit. Whereas you will get that amongst the people who can actually identify and are suffering from some of these issues. So it's up to us to kind of find that balance and use an approach that takes into consideration what the people in Ghana are going through and some of the issues they're suffering from, as well as the fact that we need to develop entrepreneurially and economically.
Thank you, Carl. Stella, go ahead.
One very quick point. I just wanted to say that, yes, it's important that we talk about job creation and enterprise and all the good things that are going on the ground. That's very important, and it's something that we don't see very often in the media. But we also need to get the balance right. We can't just talk about all those things and ignore the other problems and issues going on, which are also opportunities, as we've talked about. But very closely sort of linked to that is the fact that one of the key barriers, which the report also brought out, to young people engaging in development is the fact that they see all these media perceptions thrown out there, and it's about that little child with flies, etc., and they do not want to be engaged, and it's such a big, it's such a key sort of issue. So I think it's really about trying to get the balance right, but we need to talk about job creation, enterprise, the profit-making side, as well as all the problems.
Thank you, Stella. Mr. Addo, to close.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the sentiments that you have brought to the fore. And my reason of being here is also to take some of these proposals, and then we continue to also to dialogue with government, some of the things that we should do. But the reason why I'm so interested in this evening's program is that one of the greatest things that we are still trying to tap into is the human resource. Is the human resource. With the human resource, and especially the youthful resource that we have, that can turn our economies around. I believe, and that's what the government has said, if we want to become an upper middle income country by 2015, we need to grow between 8 to 10%. If we can grow between 8 to 10%, we have to diversify the economy. We can only diversify the economy if, like you said, if we have the infrastructures working, but the core thing is to do value addition. Value addition. And that is where I'm saying that we need to tap into your things. If you look at the structure of our GDP growth, we are doing well with services. Now the financial sector, the insurance sector, the IT sector is booming. But we believe that Ghana is an agrarian economy. So the best thing that after agrarian economy, we should have moved to industrialization. But the services have taken over. That's why the government is so much particular that in the next coming years, we want to turn Ghana into an industrial hub. As I'm speaking right now, only yesterday, if you watch, our ministers were in Western Region to launch Western Region as an industrial hub. We want to turn the whole Western Region into an industrial hub because we are going to, the gas is already there, and the gas is going to be used to help develop industries. We are also developing an ICT park at Tema, Free Zone Enclave. And these are some of the things that we want you to tap into. You have to be interested and you know that the better times are ahead. But if you don't position yourself now, by the time we are there, you'll be far behind. So one person says something, you need to make sure that you have the right skills and the right linkages that will be able to turn all these opportunities around. Thank you very much.
In what ways can the diaspora youth use their skills and or finance to invest in the development of Ghana? Now, this is a very wide question, so we're going to tap into many aspects. But I'm going to turn to Mr. Addo first, just to talk about the high-level prosperity partnership in Africa, and specifically the partnership that was signed between the UK and Ghana.
The UK government identified 5 countries in alphabetical order, if I'm correct. Angola, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Tanzania, and Mozambique. 5 African countries. In fact, the way we were selected, we are not privy to. But the only thing is that it underscores the government's commitment to get some of the fundamentals right. And you know, most of these developed countries, before they do such a thing, they will have done their analysis, and they know where we are going. The high-level prosperity partnership is seek to deepen the relationship between UK and these 5 African countries. For Ghana, we have core areas that we have started dialoguing with the British government to see that we will use this partnership to achieve the best for the country. The first one is education. The second, infrastructure development. The third is SME development. The fourth we are looking at is to turn some of these mining areas to reclaim some of these lands and use them for industrial parks and other productive things. And then we are also looking at sister city relationship to build London, Accra, yes, those type of relationship. The last but not the least, we are also looking at using this partnership to build a strong, vibrant business environment. If you look at our time zone and then the UK's time zone, we are on the same time zone. Flight, 6 hours or 6 to 6.5, you are in Ghana. Nowadays, BA is flying sometimes twice, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And we believe if we position ourselves well with the English background, we will have a lot to get out of this partnership. So this is a new partnership that we have entered into. As I'm speaking right now, we have formed a committee with the British government, Mark Simmons, and other MPs are all part of it. We want to come out with bankable and achievable projects. It's not going to be projects that are going to be sitting on somebody's table or desk, and after 5 years, the amount of money or support that is supposed to come to us, we cannot see it. This one is going to be measured. It's within 2-3 years, this is what has been done, and everybody can attest to it. So we are privileged to be part of this partnership. And only last year, 23rd November, the partnership was launched, and we are all part of it. So we must be glad that as Ghanaians, we have been selected among the 5 countries to enjoy this partnership.
Francesca, can I just get your views generally on how the youth can use their skills and or finance to invest in development of Ghana?
I don't know a lot about finance, hence my passionate response. But the skills, someone mentioned about it's good to know what skills you have, first of all. And I think the first point of call would be to spend some time in Ghana and just lend a hand to where your skills are needed. Because it's easy for me to say I'm good at, I don't know, working with young people. So I want to go and work in the youth ministry in Ghana to bring about effective change in youth policy, when the truth is the most effective way may be to work on a program from the youth ministry or work with a local NGO. And I think the easiest way to use your skills to make a difference is to research, find out where is the funding, or when you look globally, where is funding being placed for the different aspects of development in Ghana, and what skills do you have that match up to those different priorities, and then to seek opportunities that allow you to follow your passions and see where your skill set lies for those programs and those policy areas.
Thank you for that, Francesca. Stella, can I get your views?
Yeah, sure. I think it was interesting to hear Mr. Ado talk about education as being one of the key sort of priorities. In terms of the research that we carried out, the courses that people were actually given to, I think the one that came out on top was around education, and then it was around basic needs, food and water, etc. But I think in terms of using these skills, for us, it's very much about, it's not just skills, it's obviously it's skills, it's time, it's money as well. And so if I just give you some quick stats, basically, in terms of those who are actually giving back financially, I think it was about 24%. And we did a quick sort of estimate of how, in terms of that number, how much people were actually remitting. And it's averaged at about £140 per person, say on average every 6 months. Now, it's not so much about the giving or the aid bit of it. I think we need to understand that a lot of this, in terms of the connection, it's about, for young people, it's about the motivations are around connectivity and identity. It's around being able to give something back where they can also see a return for it. It may not necessarily be a financial return, but it's about a two-way connection. And it's in terms of remittances, it's also what we can do with that as well. It's not just about giving the money, but I guess it's about all the other opportunities of whether we're able to create a bond, for example, some sort of diaspora investment, some sort of diaspora development, finance, etc. But I think in terms of skills transfer as well, it's very much about, it could be business opportunities as well. So it's not just about going there and volunteering and doing something that is charitable. I think for a lot of people, it's very much a two-way street, and it could be through corporates, it could be through African organizations, it could be through the government. And again, it's about where the opportunities are and trying to link up so that the skills transfer is useful and beneficial and perhaps sustainable as well.
Okay. Thank you for that, Stella. Carl, can I get your views on this point?
Yeah, because of the way the panels answered the question, I'm going to take a slightly different approach, and I'm going to focus on the aspect that we can take. So just for example, I'm going to talk about media, and first of all, I think it's important to highlight the fact that Mifri Ghana and the WAM campaign take a very innovative approach to the way they use media, and as a result, they can do things like this, and they can actually reach out to the diaspora young people. But just for example, I think it's not always a case, again, like Stella highlighted, it's not always a case of, going out and buying land or sending money home, because these are things that, especially as young people, not all of us have access to doing that. However, what we do have access to is videographers and photographers and bloggers and stuff. And something as simple as signing up with Mifri Ghana or volunteering some of your time with Mifri Ghana as, for example, as a blogger or as a photographer can actually assist in helping the development of Ghana. Not directly, but for example, if you're doing that, you're obviously assisting the WAM campaign, which as a result, you can help spread the message and you can help increase the amount of young people that do go out there and volunteer. So I think it's not just a case of looking at it, again, from that top-down perspective of how can I use my finances and maybe get a return, because that's a very long-term approach. If we're talking directly what we can do now, if I'm a young person here who's just coming out of university or still in university, how can I use my time to actually help? That's something very simple. The media today is a tool that we can use, and we kind of do with it what we want. So we can use it as a tool to advocate and to educate for whatever issues we feel are relevant.
Thank you for that, Carl. Again, very good points, very well made. Now, when we're talking about diaspora youth and investment, the word invest and finance sort of go hand in hand. A lot of people think, to invest, you need money. Now that can also be difficult to come by with some youngsters. And we heard earlier tonight, that, there's opportunities to invest in purchasing land in Ghana. There's so much opportunity. There's so much land here, land there, all over the place. And it's so easy to purchase and invest in land. But what is the reality? Is the investment and purchase of land, is that actually possible? This is a question I'm going to throw up to the panel.
I just want to touch on that. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on, I actually had a phone call with Arnold the other day, and I just highlighted a point that I remember when I first started working, just doing some retail work, and I had a guy who had just moved to the UK from Ghana, and I told him that I was from Ghana and I'd like to go and live there one day. He said, "Oh, I will find you some land to buy, and, you know, you can do this and you can do that. I'll, you know, double your money and stuff." I say, obviously that's a small example, but a lot of young people and a lot of people, Ghanaians in general, we kind of get sucked into that, and we think that it's a very straightforward process of going, buying some land and, you know, okay, cool, I'm rich. It doesn't really work like that. And that's not to say that using finance as a way to develop is wrong. Of course, that can help us, but that's not something that we need to specifically focus on. I think it's interesting that the High Level Prosperity Project didn't have a youth aspect to it, because when you were going through some of the, when you're going through the strands that you're focusing on, a lot of them, again, are top-down development. And how do we ensure, like Francesca said earlier, that generations after us will be able to handle the development that we've put in place? Because if we're specifically focusing on finance and buying land, how are the young people after us, or us ourselves, going to have the skills to actually use this stuff and continue that development? So there needs to be a focus on things that are not specifically related to finance and not just buying land.
Thank you, Carl. Mr. Addo, your response, please.
I was trying to give a brief, let me say, overview about the HLPP. If I want to go into the details, yes, SME development is looking at entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship, we are looking at how to support the startups, how to support entrepreneurs to be able to value addition and all those things. So that is where the youth can come in. You see, let me be frank with you. We are youth. There are a lot of monies that come into our system, but the way we misuse it and we misapply it. I'm having 2 ladies that I'm staying with. In Ghana, they were using mobile phones that were powerful than the phone that I was using. And they were staying with me, and I was giving them food to eat. I was buying things for them. The phones that they were using were expensive than the phone that I was using. I'm being frank with you. You see, sometimes we put it bluntly, cut your coat according to your size. And little drops of water will make what? Mighty ocean. Saving, most of us, we don't have saving habit. Everything that comes into our hand, from right to left, and then we squander it. Whatever you are doing, you must be disciplined. Whatever you are doing, you must be frugal. Whatever you are doing, you must be able to give good account of it. So please, as a youth, I've told you, I'm so proud to be among you. And I said, I will be a future leader.
Thank you, Mr. Addo. Francesca, can I just get your views on this?
In my view, I didn't have a view before I heard the conversation now, if I'm completely honest. But I think whatever the opportunities are, there needs to be more information about how you do those things, because it's easy to leave from here and everyone has a plan to say, I'm going to go and buy land in Ghana the next time I'm in Ghana. But sometimes there needs to be a how-to. So how do I go about it? How do I know if something is legitimate? How do I make sure that I'm getting the best opportunity? Where do I get that information from? Is there a place that I'm able to ask the right questions? If I'm not asking the right questions, who builds my capacity to be able to do that? Because when you're when you're going to another country, you can't go with your same mindset. I think one of the things that's important to mention, though, is that sometimes when you're first generation born here, it's not even like your family are massively rich anyway. So the reality is when you go back, you're still grinding a little bit. And so I think there needs to be more honesty and transparency to say, if you don't need the 100 million, however much you need, how much exactly do I need and what can this give me? And until that information is kind of laid out clearly and I know exactly how to go about it, it's never going to be easy, because I will just be going in and I won't know what to do. That's what I think.
Thank you for that, Francesca. It's interesting, obviously, we talked about investment and purchasing land. I mean, from my point of view, I mean, I totally agree with Francesca in terms of the information. The most time you hear it is through word of mouth. You know, your uncle will ring you up and say, oh, come and invest. There's a great opportunity here, there, and everywhere. You know, the last time, a couple of weeks ago, my uncle rang me up about investing in a local petrol station. and that was it. There was no word of who's, you know, who's behind it, who's his guarantor, has he secured any money, you know. So I think the information thing is key. And, you know, the question I want to pose to everyone here is, it goes back to what I was saying in the first question, is whose responsibility? How do we access this information of how to? Is it for the individuals to go out and look, or is it for more organisations or the government to proactively inform us of these opportunities? Stella.
Before I answer that question, I just wanted to talk about the issue of land, and in terms of should we be buying land, and I think that in terms of being able to do that, I mean, when I was in Kenya a few years ago, I found out that they've actually got a system where a group, like a network of friends, come together and contribute and save over a period of time to buy land. That's how they do it. And I knew quite a number of people who had actually done that. So that's one way of doing it. But also, in as much as it probably seems like, why do I want to do that? I mean, we've also got to remember that being as agrarian as our country is as well, that when you have lots of people moving from the rural areas into the cities and you have land that is just lying there, it's a great opportunity for either the chief or whoever to go in and sell it. And then they end up selling it to a Westerner or to someone who isn't that interested in the development of the country, for example. So again, it's something to think about in a sense. But also, I don't think it's just about land. There's a very interesting product at the moment called Student Funder, which is an online way of supporting someone who is studying or who wants to come over to UK to study. But I think the important thing about that is that you can target it to yourself very specifically. So, for example, if you speak with the High Commission, etc., and you understand that agriculture is priority in the country, and you decide that you want to support a student who is studying in agriculture, there's a way of doing it where you have a relationship with the person. Obviously, they get support from a number of different people, so it's not just dependent on the one sponsor, which is a good thing. But then there's a way of doing it where you can have your own sort of agreement in terms of how they pay you back, and it doesn't necessarily have to be financial. It could be that you're saying, I'm going to pay you, I'm going to sponsor you for 3 years to do X, Y, Z, but at the end of it, I would like you to stay wherever you are and work in X economy or whatever it is. But there are all sorts of different agreements like that going on. I don't quite know the details of it, but it's worth looking into. And also, again, in terms of investing, again, it's not just about land. There are also things to do with shares and bonds and all of that. And the banks, you'll find in Ghana, have always got, because the economic growth is quite good as well, there's like 8% return, basically, on some shares and bonds. And if I thought that by putting my own, investment into that, the money perhaps was going to support agriculture, was going to support farmers for loans, etc., I would do that, basically. So there are quite a number of different ways of investing and getting something, and getting, basically, being able to get something back for it.
Thank you, Stella. Mr. Addo.
Yeah. The good thing, going back to the first person, and I'll link it to your own, we were talking about our educational system. It has been one of the major challenges that we are still confronted with. You see most of the schools that are springing up, they are all into humanities. We want to go into applied science. And thank God, University of Ghana, because I was part of the committee, they have now set up an applied science department that will link directly to industries. So the number of research that we do, you cannot be doing the same recycle. We are just recycling. When you go to school of admin or accounts or anywhere, all the topics are recycled. But we want to do research based on industrial needs. Or you can do it and somebody can take it for his project or his business. Then you are talking about the people in Ghana, that because of the way most of the universities are now having career development centers. We are having a program with UNDP in Ghana. A program that we are doing, we have career resource centers, skills building seminars, entrepreneurship development, internship placement program. These are all some of the things that we are doing with UNDP. This is why I want to also challenge all of us. The opportunities are there. The challenges are there to be confronted and to overcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carl, if you want to respond to that.
Yeah, just to touch on Kofi's last point, I'm going to keep it brief, was just in regards to one of the key words I think we need to think about also is patience, and that's one thing that we probably don't have a lot of. And Francesca highlighted it backstage, especially when you're working in youth development. Young people expect big changes to happen overnight, when realistically that's not going to happen. The example that Kofi just used was over 10 years, and that's the kind of thinking that we need to have. That's not really long term. When we're talking long term, we're talking 50, 60 years. But for something to develop over 10 years and have that much of an effect is what we need to be looking towards, rather than to just say, I want to invest a bit of money and actually see a return over the next year or over the next 2 years. Whereas you can do something slowly, which will probably involve a lot more people than just yourself, and you can see a lot more of a development over a 5 to 10 year period. So it's a case of patience and having that, almost like acting as visionaries, because for young people, we get very excited about development, but we need to understand that it's a process, especially if we say we're working in a developing country. It's a case of development itself. It doesn't happen overnight.
Thank you, Carl. I'll take one more point from the panelists and we'll go to the audience for a couple more. So, Francesca.
Okay, just to kind of come back to the question that was asked about how do you ensure that there's not a negative view of diaspora coming to Ghana and development. I think the onus is on the young people in the audience. Being a leader is also about driving change, and it would be the responsibility of people going back to look for opportunities to say, how do I go and take up an opportunity but create opportunities for other people? One of the things that I'm passionate about in everything I do is how do I leave it, or how do I open the door and widen the participation of other people who aren't engaged in this process? And it would be just the kind of person you are, the values that you hold dear, that you would say, if I was going back because I had a job, I'm going to ensure that opportunities are created for other local people to be able to come in. And that is up to you, I would say, or that would be your choice to do it.
Thank you. Stella.
Thanks. Just to add very quickly that I think the onus is it's on us as young people, but I think it's also on the state as well. It's also on the government in terms of providing the structures and the incentives, essentially. Just to give a very quick example, I studied at USD in Kumasi, and that was my first degree, and it was in history. It was in history and English. Now, part of the history bit was around Ashanti history. Now, a lot of the books that were available were written by Westerners, okay? However, the lecturer that we had done her PhD on Ashanti, and she had basically taken the time to go to the palace, to basically to make sure that she understood it herself. Now, the sad thing was, she had this very fat booklet. It wasn't even a booklet. It was sheets of paper clipped together of her PhD. She couldn't get the support to publish it, and that's all that she had. And so she used to make copies for us, basically. And it was, at the time, it was like, okay, we'll just have the copies. But later, sort of looking back on it, I thought if she had the support institutionally within the university to be able to do that, that information would be available to everyone. And I think she was the only lecturer at the time who had taken the time to do a PhD on that. So it's just one example of how even sort of locally people actually struggle. But, if the government and the universities and are able to provide that kind of support and institutions and structures, then it's easier for people to tap into. And then it's also easier for the diaspora as well to be able to tap into it, because then the information is out there, it's available.
Thank you, Stella. Sadly, we're out of time, so I'm just going to ask the panelists for their last words. 1 minute each, please. Mr. Addo first.
I thought I've done justice to all the subjects. I'm passionate about one thing, and that is you must stay focused in whatever you are doing. There are a lot of opportunities around, but like my colleague said, it takes time. Just be cautious about what you are doing. Do not be sidetracked. Do not be disturbed about what people are saying or doing. Once you know what you are doing, be focused. And then the second thing, be disciplined in whatever you are doing. be disciplined. You see, you are in a system that so many, you are being battered left and right. But if you are focused and you are disciplined, you'll be able to achieve whatever you have set for yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carl, your 1 minute begins now.
Cheers. Yeah, I'm going to highlight 3 points. First of all, is that in volunteering, obviously, as I touched on in the beginning, in volunteering with the WAN campaign, that was almost the catalyst for me to take it upon myself and to get to a certain level. I wouldn't say I've progressed, but I wouldn't say that I'm where I want to be or I've done anything absolutely amazing. But as a result, I'm a young person from South East London working at the Commonwealth Secretariat, which not a lot of people, obviously apart from Francesca, can say that they're can say that they're doing. And I think it's important to highlight that something as small as the WAM campaign was actually a catalyst for this. So I think we need to take it upon ourselves as young people. If we really do say we want to develop Ghana, first key word I say, we need to be proactive. Opportunities aren't going to come and find us. We really need to go out there and find them. And we've got institutions and platforms like Mifri Ghana and like the WAM campaign. There's a host of other organizations out there that we can use. We don't have to, everyone doesn't have to be, an entrepreneur, and everybody doesn't have to be a social entrepreneur and go and set up their own organization. But it's a case of us all putting our hands together and using the organizations that we do have. And the one final thing is outcome, I'd say. So from an organization, from an event like this, what are we now going to do? I'm not going to turn around and say everybody needs to go create a policy briefing, but together we can all come together and create a policy briefing that we can either go and lobby off the back of, or we can use as a tool to kind of just say to decision makers, this is what we'd like to do. So if we do this, whether it be once a year or whether we do monthly or whether we do every couple of months, I think it's a case we need to look at the outcomes and say, what are we doing off the back of this, rather than just discussing and not going anywhere with it.
Thank you, Carl. Francesca, final words, please. Quickly,
I'll try. I'm joking, I will. One of the end of my favourite quotes says that success is knowing that another life has breathed easier because you have lived. And my final words would be that you should figure out what it is that you have to offer and work hard to make sure that other lives are breathing easier in Ghana because you have lived, be it through business, be it through addressing gender inequality, be it through addressing education. Just do what you have to do it well. If you don't know what part you have to play, get your hands involved, and in you helping out someone else, you'll figure out what part you have to play, and just do it well, and that's how development happens. So, yeah.
Thank you. Stella.
Yeah. Just very quickly to say that in terms of giving, just remember that it's around time, it's money, it's skills. And I think somebody mentioned this earlier about skills transfer. It's actually going to be the biggest thing that young people actually give in terms of research that we carried out. And also, be creative and innovative. Like we said before, if you see a problem, think of it as an opportunity and what can you do. And I think it's also about taking on some of the opportunities as well. So we've had Mr. Adder here tonight instead of being at his daughter's birthday. He's opened the doors, and it's about being bold and being practical and just picking up that phone or getting a few people together, go knocking on the doors. It's about taking the opportunities where they are and grasping them. And utilizing our networks as well, talking to people and finding out where to go, who to talk to. We know that there's an issue with accessibility and information, but it doesn't mean that we have to wait for them to come to us. So we also need to be proactive and go find them.
Thank you, Stella.